Welcome to the WSO2 Integrator MI webinar series focused on banking, financial services and insurance sector. Throughout this episode series, our main goal is to showcase how it's simple and convenient with WSO2 Integrator MI to develop business integration use cases for your business. As the topic of the first episode, we have selected banking customer onboarding scenario. Now let's deep dive into the business use case. Let's assume the bank we are developing the use case is for the Pinnacle Bank. So Pinnacle Bank expect to implement a AI powered customer onboarding flow for their bank. So if I explain the business requirement, the Pinnacle banks want to simplify and speed up how new customers open accounts. The current onboarding process is manual, repetitive and takes too long. From your experience, you also know the manual onboarding process of a bank is somewhat time consuming and also troublesome. So to stay competitive in the market, the Pinnacle Bank expect to integrate generative AI capabilities to their integration flows in customer onboarding. So after doing a research, I have developed a simple integration flow to showcase how generative AI can be used to speed up the customer onboarding process of a bank. As you can see on the screen, this is a high-level flow of customer onboarding process. The flow has been divided into 6 major steps. The steps 1 would be customer application. Within this stage, customer will fill out the application form, and when it reaches to the point where customer upload his salary slip, a verification call will be sent to the bank site to verify the salary claim by the customer with the salary defined in the salary slip. So depending on the salary verification result, the web app will allow customers to move forward with the application process. If the verification success, customer will fill out all the details and submit the application at the stage 3. So if the verification fails, the bank will ask customer to submit the correct salary slip. So when completed application received for the bank side, the bank will generate a reference ID, basically the application ID, and respond to the customer. So after that, the process happens asynchronously. Under application processing stage, there are 3 steps as KYC verification, then account creation, finally welcome email. So under KYC verification state, the risk assessment is done for the customer depending on the details provided by the customer. Then depending on the rule set defined for different risk levels, the flow divides. I will explain those things in detail in the next slides. So after all those things happen, finally a welcome email will be sent to the customer. That's basically the high level flow. Okay, now let's look deeply into the detailed integration flow. In stage 1 to 3, this is a detailed flow. Customer will fill out the application. Then when it comes to the salary verification stage, a verification request will be done to WSO2 MI. When the request reaches to the WSO2 MI side, MI will call the generative AI service for the salary verification. Their generative service will perform 3 things. It will look into the document authenticity, then it will look into the salary amount and extraction and verification. That's the first point where we use generative AI in this sample scenario. Then in the application processing stage, we use a AI agent to carry out all the 3 steps I mentioned: KYC verification, account creation, and to finally send the welcome email. I hope I have given you a complete idea about integration use case we are going to develop. So now let's dive into the development. So first thing you should do is to set up your development environment. That's very simple and straightforward. WSO2 Integrator MI has a low-code editor developed as a VS Code extension. So in this demo, I'm using that low-code editor to develop our sample integration scenario. What you have to simply do, open VS Code, then go to extension section, then search for WSO2 Micro Integrator. Then simply click install. Just like that, your development setup is done from a single click. So now let's develop our integration for the banking customer onboarding scenario. In the left hand side down, you can see our extension. Then click create new project. I'll give the project name as bank customer onboarding integration. Then click the button create project. So under the first stage of our integration flow, we have to do a verification on the customer's salary. For that purpose, I will create a verification API. By defaulting WSO2 Integrator MI, we get a get resource for the APIs we create. But in our case, we need a post resource. So I go to the edit mode and update the method to post and also define the resource path as salary. So make development experience very easy for you. WSO2 Integrator MI has a built-in tryout feature. So there you can set a sample request payload, and depending on payload, you can carry out your development. So I will now set a sample payload here. Like this. One thing I want to highlight is like request payload structure and response payload structure, those things like totally depend on the developer. Then I will add the sample request and save it. When an API calls comes to this endpoint, I want first have a log to indicate that I have received an API call. Then as I mentioned earlier, in this API we are going to use generative AI capabilities to compare between the claim salary and the salary defined in the salary slip. So for that purpose, WSO2 Integrator MI has a AI module. So I will go with that AI module. Just search AI and it will be listed down in the right side. Then download. Since this verification request is a one-time operation, I will go with AI module chat operation. Then the AI chat operation form will pop up. Then what you have to do, you have to create a new connection for that purpose. One thing you should note is like WSO2 integrate MI AI module have the capability to like connect with most common large language model available at the market. So for this demonstration, I will use OpenAI. The first thing I will do is like create a connection to the OpenAI. So to do that, I should have an OpenAI key. So normally the credentials, then environment specific things we keep as configurations. So prior to move forward, I will add my configurations. So to do that, what you have to do, go to the project overview. Then on the right side, you can see configurable section. So then click manage configurables and click add configuration. Then I will add my OpenAI key configuration and click save and click update configurables. Now, after adding the configurables there, you have to go to the file explorer view, then find this .ini file, then add your OpenAI key here. After that, go to the recursive of your API. Now let's add our operation. Click add new connection to create a connection for the OpenAI. Then select OpenAI and give a name for your connection. Then read the OpenAI key from configs. Click add. So since this is a one-time operation, I don't need to define a memory connection. In your integration use cases, if you want to keep track of your chats, you need to have a memory connection. But in this case, since this is a one-time operation, I don't provide the memory connection. And I'll give user query. So what we expect from generative AI to compare between the salary claimed by the customer and the salary defined in their salary slip. Go to the advanced section under system prompts. Tell you are a, I'll say you are a AI assistant for salary verification. Then on the user query, I'll say compare salary defined in. Then I can go to this expression editor and select salary with the salary So in the attachment section, I will give the salary receipt since it is in the base64 encoded format. So when giving the attachments, you have to like follow a specific format that is shown in the help tip, but you have to give the content type plus the content. So the content would be the salary slip data. Then the chat operation output will be written to AI underscore chat1 variable. You can give whatever the variable name you want, but I will keep this as it is. Then I will click add. Now, what you can do with the MI Copilot, the AI assistance we have for WSO2 Integration AI, you can improve this user prompt for better clarity. So let's do that thing now. You can see a magic icon in the upper panel. Click that. Then ask, improve the user prompt for better clarity. And also, let's set some tolerance. Now the MI Copilot is thinking. Let's wait a little bit. Now it's generating the artifact. Prior to add that to the project, you can just check the artifact generated by MI Copilot like this. As you can see, it has done a great job in refining the user prompt. Okay, now let's add this to the project. Okay, now you can see our project has been updated with the MI Copilot generated content. So finally, what we should do, we should respond. We have two options. We can like manually create a response payload, or else we can just respond with the JSON payload created by the generative AI as well. So you should note one thing: if you click this override message body, it will not add the AI underscore chat variable. It just override the message body. So I will like click override the message body, then update. Then I will add the response media to respond to the client. Just like that, we have finished creating our verification API. For better tracking, I will add the log here and append the response payload from the generative AI and add the message as verification result. Now we have finished implementing our verification API. So now let's test it. So what you have to do, in the upper right corner, you can see the run button. Click that run button. Then a Carbon application will be built from the integration scenario and will be deployed with the micro integrator server. Okay, now our server is up. From the runtime services panel, select verification API, then click try out. Under try out, we have post salary resource, and click try out and paste the sample payload. As you can see in the logs, our verification request is successful and AI has given a justification why it is successful. So now since you are finished with creating the verification API, now I will like get the assistance of the MI Copilot to create the onboarding API. So I have a Swagger definition in hand. I will provide that definition to the MI Copilot and ask to create the API. Now MI Copilot is generating the API as it's defined in the Swagger definition. According to the Swagger definition, there are two endpoints defined. One is to submit the application, other is to like get the status of a submitted application. So MI Copilot has successfully generated both resources. You can see the generated artifact from here. Now let's add that to the project. Now in the API listing, you can see we have added the onboarding API. If I go to the submit resource, you can see from the API definition, the MI Copilot has identified necessary fields and wherever the payloads are needed and has added those things for us. So it's that much easy like to work with the AI assistants, the MI Copilot. Okay. So according to the integration like API generated by MI Copilot, first thing it do is like log the onboarding request has been received. Next, it will do validation on the necessary fields in the payload. If some payload is missing in the payload, it will like go in the error flow and response with the proper response message. So if the necessary payloads are in the request payload, what will happen? It will try to get a random UUID, but WSO2 Integrator MI itself has a utility mediator where we have the functionality to create UUID. So I will use that thing. Under utility module, we have operation to generate UUIDs, and I will add the generated UUID as application ID. So after generating the UUID, what we should do, we should store the application we received in a database for further processing. So let's assume we have a database with the necessary tables to store the application data. So WSO2 Integrator MI has the capability to expose database operations as data services. So now let's see how to create a data service. So in this integration flow, we can utilize those data service to save the application data we have received. So to create a data service, go to project overview, then click add artifact. Then here under this list down, click the view more button. Then there you can find data services. So I will name the data service as Pinnacle Bank Data Service. Then I need to add the data source. For this demonstration, I will use MySQL. Then you have to add the database name. So my database name would be BankDB. And I will add the username and password here. Then click next. Next, we have to add the database driver. Now you can test the connection. Connection is successful, so I can move forward. Now the data source has been added. Now let's create the data service. Okay. Now our data service is created. In the left hand side, you can create the data service. Click the data service and add a resource. Now I'll add the get resource to get the status of the applications we have submitted and a path and an application ID. And we should add the application ID as a mapping. So one thing I want to highlight is this mapping name would be the key value we received from the outside to the data service, and query parameters will be an internal reference to the value we are receiving. I'll add the request like this. Then on transformation, I need the JSON response. There, I'll add the JSON payload like this and submit. Resource I will be creating is to insert data. So I'll say path as application insert. That will be a post request. Then click add. After that, as input mappings, you should give what kind of data you are receiving to this data service to insert into the DB. So I will receive my application ID. Then you can save. The next thing would be the request data. Finally, the status. After that, submit. So then under query, we should provide the insert query. So depending on my database, I define my database query. Then I click sub. Okay. Now I have created data services to insert data into the DB and also get the status of a particular application by providing the application ID. Now I will create a separate resource to update the status. It will be put request. In the mapping, you will receiving application ID and the status. And I'll give the update query and click submit. Now, as you can see, we have successfully created our data services. Now, let's move back to the onboarding API implementation. Thereafter generating the random UUID, what we should do, we should store the application data we received. For that purpose, I will call the insert data service. So prior to call and data service, we should establish a connection with the data service. So I will create the data service connection and the URL would be this. I'll click at. Then as relative path, I will put application insert. Our request would be JSON body. And I will add the application ID would be randomly generated UUID. Wrap up with codes. Then request data we should have to pass as a JSON string. So that purpose I can use built-in function string and pass payload as the argument. And finally the status. I don't override the body because I had to preserve the current payload. Okay. After that, now we have saved our application data. Now what we have to do is respond to the client, but we don't need to keep the client waiting. So in that kind of scenarios, what we do, we use the message stroke processor approach to process the messages asynchronously. So prior to adding to the message store, I'll have to add the randomly generated UID as an application ID to the current payload. So to do that, in WSO2 Integrate MI, we have several ways of manipulating the payloads. One is like using a payload mediator. Next one is a data mapper. The other one is the enrich mediator. So in my case, it's a simple use case where I need to add a new field to the current existing payload. So I will use enrich mediator for that purpose. So I'll create a property which is a this and the key value pair. Then using the enrich mediator, I will enrich that property as a child of the current payload. And finally, I will store that in a message store. So I have to create a message store. So in WSO2 Integrate MI, we have different message store. For this demo purpose, I will use the in-memory message store, but that is only for the development purposes. So if you go into the production, you will need to use one of these other message stores. We have RabbitMQ, JMS message store, KDBC message store, likewise. So then after enriching, I will add to the message store. My message store would be application store. I don't need to do any pre-processing to the current message because I have already done that. So I don't need to mention this store sequence. Then add. Okay. Then finally, I'll create a payload like this. Onboarding request successfully submitted. Then respond with the application ID, which is stored in application ID, and the submission date. This will be enough, I think. I'll move ahead with two fields. I'll say you will receive progress via an email, then update. Okay. Now since you have finished with creating the onboarding API, submit resource, now we need to modify the get status resource. So there I need to modify to expect the application ID as a query param. Then after that, I'll call the data service to get the relevant application status from the database. And class the application ID as a path param. So, okay. So since we are now finished with creating the onboarding API, now let's focus on how the message should be processed after that. So after storing the message in the message store, we need to define a message processor to process that message. But again, like when the message is received from the message processor, we should define a sequence to process that message. That logic should be defined as a sequence. So let's create that processing sequence first. I name it as application processing sequence. Now I will be setting the request payload for the easiness of the development. I suggest you to follow this approach. Like it's very easy when you have set up a sample request payload in the tryout section. So in the future development, when you're adding mediators and connectors to the flow, you will get suggestions. Then I will first log the message you are receiving. Then as I described in the beginning, in the application processing state, three things happen. First thing is the KYC verification. Next thing is, depending on the KYC result, creation of the banking account. And third one is the sending of the email. And also, after processing, we should update the application status in the DB as well. So when the customer requests the status through the onboarding API get status request, we have to retrieve and send. So to perform all those three tasks, the KYC verification, then the account creation, then the sending the email, I will use the AI agent here. Because with the AI agent, we can give all those operations as a tools to that AI agent, and ask them to perform the actions behalf on us. That's very easy, right? I'll create an AI agent. When we are creating an AI agent, we have to give a memory connection because we need to keep the history of the things he has done so far to get the next decisions about the steps he should take. So I will create a memory connection here. At the moment, we have option to create a PostgreSQL DB memory. Then again, I will store PostgreSQL username password in the configs. What you have to do, go to the configurations, then update the configurations. And also in our integration use case, we intended to give a knowledge base access to the AI agent to get the current promotions going on and what kind of services the bank's offering apart from the account services. So when you are sending the email, it can customize email based on the customer's age, then financial background, and send more details about the services he or she can receive from the bank. So to connect to a vector database, I need to have a access key. So in this demonstration, I will use Pinecone as my vector database. I'll add that config as well. And also I need to keep customer service email and customer service email password. In update configurations, then I have to update .tna file. Okay, we are good to go with the configs. Can get from configs. Then as session ID, I will provide application ID. Then as the role, I will define customer onboarding AI assistant. Then as instruction, I'll add these things. The rule set depending on the risk level, how the decision should take. Those details are defined in this prompt. And as a use query, I will provide the current payload. So no attachment. Then the response from generative AI will be added to this AI underscore agent one variable recursively. Then as tools, I should add KYC provider post request. And then I should add the connection to the KYC provider. Then we should hand over the responsibility of creating the request payload to the AI, and I will provide a sample payload which the AI can use as a reference. The next tool I should provide is like the endpoint to create an account. I should create a bank endpoint to create the account. Let's say account endpoint. Here also I hand over the responsibility of creating the request payload to the AI, and I will provide the sample payload. Then the next tool would be the email. I need to send an email. So to do that, I need to create a email connection. So in this case, I'm using Gmail. Then I'll get username from configs. That is basically my email, and the password from also configs. One thing to note here, when you're using the email connector, if your account has two-factor authentication enabled, you have to get the app password instead of using your email password. Then the from email would be the CS email. The to email would be email of the customer. Then they should decide on the subject and the content depending on the path according to our rule set we have defined in the instructions. And I will add this. And again, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we intended to give the knowledge base access to this AI agent to get the current promotion and services details. to customize the email we are sending based on the age, the financial background, kind of criteria of the customer. So to get knowledge from the knowledge database, I'm using Pinecone here. The API key I have stored in the configs. If I show you my vector database, so my index would be customer onboard KB. And as embedding model, I am using OpenAI. Then the input would be decided by AI based on the decision which take on risk level. Then finally, I will add a tool to update the status in the DB, which is calling the update data service. Relative path would be application update. So like that, I have defined all the tools necessary for the AI agent to execute the instructions we have given. Now I need to point this sequence into a message processor. So I'll go to add artifact, then go to message processor. And for the demo purpose, I will use message sampling processor, and I will add the name application processor. Then store would be application store. The sequence would be application process sequence. Then I will create. So once the message would be received from the message store, the message processor will be monitoring the message store by the given interval, and if the messages are available, it will take and process using the application processing sequence. Okay. So, and also we can create a separate API to facilitate adding knowledge to the database, vector database. To do that, I'll create a separate API. Let's say knowledge API. It will be a post request. And our AI module, we have operation called add to knowledge. We can utilize the same connections we have. Then the input would be payload.content. This will receive content as base64 encoded format. Then the type would be PDF to text, and it will be added to the vector database. And we will simply respond like this. Okay. Now all the flows needed for the integration scenario has been completed. Now let's see in action. Now what you have to do, you have to run the server. Okay, now you can see our service up and running. I have created sample web app for the demonstration purposes, and I have connected this web app to the APIs we have developed so far. So let's see in action. Now I'll select the monthly salary income. So service repeat says 5,600 USD dollars. Then I will upload the salary slip. Now you can see verification is done by calling the verification API. Now let's move to the next step. I will select a savings account. Then I will upload the necessary documents. Then finally I will submit the application. Okay, so like that you can see now our integration flow is working. We get the email as expected. And now let's try another customer. So now we can compare between the emails we are receiving to see whether AI agent is acting as expected. I have sample document for this person as well. So I'm using those documents. Okay, salary verification is done. I'll select the current account for this person and send request. Now I upload the relevant documents. Okay, now from the logs we can see the message has been stored in the message store, and now AI agent is processing the message. So now let's check our inbox to see whether we have got the email.
As you can see, we have request to submit the required document again.
Because in the instructions we say for a high risk customer, we should ask for a bank visit. And for a medium customer, we should ask for additional document submissions. And for low risk customers, we just create the account and ask them to activate the account and send the promotion and service details. So just like that, you can see how convenient and simple is create integration flows to cater your business requirement with WSO2 Integrator MI. We will be meeting you from coming series of episodes. So keep in touch with us. Hope to see you soon.